Hello, welcome to Right Decision. Today, I want to talk to you about some of the most basic questions about migration. As you know, this content is based on the book Migration Before You Leave Home, which I recently wrote. But before I do, I want to say, so why did I write this book? The answer goes back almost 40 years when I was a university student at the University of Tehran. Several of my professors encouraged me to continue my education in the United States. Many of them had studied or taught at American universities. They believed in my academic abilities. They didn't simply encourage me. They were even ready to help create the opportunity for me to travel and continue my education there. For some time, I seriously considered it, but eventually I decided to stay. Not because I lacked ambition, and not because I believe studying abroad was a bad idea. The reason was personal. At that stage of my life, I could not imagine living thousands of miles away from my parents. Their love, their guidance, and simply having them in my life were very important to me. And for them, the idea of such a distance was difficult as well. So I stayed. At that time, I believed I had made the right decision, but life continued. I continued my education and earned advanced degrees in business administration. I spent much of my professional life in education, research, executive training, management, and consulting. Over the years, I had the opportunity to work with students, professionals, executives, and organizations facing difficult decisions in an increasingly complex and uncertain world. But one simple question never completely disappeared. Had I made the right decision? I didn't have a simple answer. And perhaps that is why the question stayed with me for so long. Over the years, whenever I met someone who had migrated, I wanted to hear their story. I spoke with people who had built successful and meaningful lives in new countries. I also traveled to several Asian countries, including South Korea and Malaysia, and studied their automotive industries, an area closely related to my professional experience in my country. At one point, I was even exploring whether I could create an opportunity for my own professional migration. But this time, things were different. I was no longer thinking only about myself. My parents were part of the decision. My wife was part of the decision, and my young children were part of the decision. The responsibility was no longer mine alone. I also met people who were struggling with loneliness, cultural adjustment, unexpected difficulties, and the realities of life after migration. And I met people who were considering migration, but were still trying to understand whether it was actually the right decision for them. I listened, I asked questions, I studied, I researched, and I observed, and gradually I began to understand something important. Migration is not simply moving from one country to another. It is a decision that can affect your identity, your relationship, your family, your career, your sense of belonging, your purpose, and your expectation for the future. Every story had its own tears and its own smiles. Until that point, I had mainly read about migration in books and articles and listened to other people's stories. I saw migration in the lives of classmates, friends, colleges, and people I knew. But suddenly, migration entered my own personal life in a completely different way. Some of our closest family members migrated. And that was when I stopped simply studying migration. I felt it. For my children, their migration was not simply the migration of relatives. They were a beloved aunt and uncle. For my wife and me, they were also part of our everyday family life. The issue was not simply that our family could no longer gather as well we had before. The deeper issue was that aunt, uncle, grandparents, and other close family members play an important role in shaping a child's emotional and psychological world. When family members migrate, the experience of family itself can change. There were empty chairs at family celebration. Sometimes birthdays were shared through a screen. Some ordinary moment of life simply disappeared. Congratulations, condolences, emotional support, being together, and even caring for our parents were increasingly handled through social media. And I learned something very important. Even the best technology cannot completely replace the warmth of human presence. After almost 4 decades of questions, conversations, observation, study, professional experience, and personal reflection, the same question came back into my life. But this time, it came back in a much more powerful way. Like millions of parents around the world, I watched my own children being to think about building their future outside their home country. And I asked myself, what can I really offer to people who are facing this decision? I am a management scholar and a strategic management professional, and I believe in something important. Migration is not simply a legal process, it is a strategic life decision. Think about a company decided whether to enter a new market. A person making the decision to enter a new country and build a new life faces a surprisingly similar challenge. Both decisions require clear thinking, honest self-awareness, and a long-term perspective. That is why I did not write a book about immigration law, and that is why I did not create a channel to tell you how to get a visa, how to find a job, or which country you should choose. There are thousands of videos and thousands of websites that can't help you with those questions. They can't tell you how to get a visa, how to find a job, how to move your life to another country. But I wanted to talk about something more fundamental: decision making. That is why I wrote Before You Leave Home, and that is why I created this channel. The most important question is not always, how can I migrate? Perhaps the first question should be, why do I want to migrate? Sometimes we think we are looking for a better country, but perhaps we are actually looking for a better career, or security, or freedom, or a sense of belonging, or a different future for our children. And sometimes we discover that what we are really looking for cannot be found simply by crossing a border. That is why I don't believe that everyone should migrate. And I don't believe that everyone should stay. I believe that every person deserves the opportunity to make one of life's most important decisions with knowledge instead of misinformation, reflection instead of impulsive decisions, and hope instead of fear. This is not an invitation to migrate, and it is not an invitation to stay. It is an invitation to pause before deciding. To look not only at the opportunities migration may create, but also at the responsibility, sacrifices, and emotional realities that may come with it. Because migration is never simply about crossing a border. It is also about crossing emotional, cultural, professional, and personal boundaries. And the decision does not affect only the person who leaves. It can affect the parents who stay, the children who grow up, the families that must adapt, a relationship that must learn how to survive distance. This is where my background in management, strategic management, and decision making becomes important. In management, we learned that important decisions should not be made simply because an opportunity looks attractive, we need to understand the situation. We need to know our objectives. We need to examine our alternatives. We need to understand the possible consequences. And most importantly, we need to understand ourselves. I believe these principles can also help us make better decisions in our personal lives. And migration is one of those decisions. Now, to make these ideas more tangible throughout the book and this channel, I created a character named Arman. Arman is not a real person. He represents millions of people who stand at the same crossroads. People with hopes, people with fears, people with doubts. People asking themselves whether they should stay or leave. In the episode ahead, we will explore this decision together with Arman, not as a lesson, but as a journey. And if even one person reaches greater clarity through this journey, even if that one person is one of my own children, then I will have achieved what I hoped for. And perhaps the question that has stayed with me for almost 40 years will finally have its answer. Every week on this channel, we will explore the big decisions that shaped our lives using ideas and tools from management and strategic decision making. I am Dr. Wakhshuri, and this is Right Decision. I will see you in the next episode. Thank you for watching.